Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. Lucy Walker had always felt different, but she couldn't quite place why. Growing up in a quiet suburban neighborhood, her life was ordinary by every definition: school, homework, and helping her mother in their small garden on weekends. But deep inside, there was an unshakable feeling that something was missing. Perhaps it was her endless fascination with the stars, or the way she could sometimes sense what others were feeling before they even spoke. She never told anyone about these odd occurrences, not even her best friend from back home, Maddie, who would probably just brushed it off as Lucy's overactive imagination. One lazy Saturday afternoon, everything changed. Lucy was home alone, lounging on the couch with a book when a soft thump came from the front porch. She ignored it at first, thinking it was just the wind. But then she noticed something out of the corner of her eye, a strange envelope sitting on the doorstep. Curious, Lucy set down her book and approached the door. The envelope was old-fashioned, sealed with wax that bore an intricate crest, the design unfamiliar, yet oddly comforting. Her name was written in neat flowing script on the front. She hesitated for a moment, her heart pounding with the anticipation of something extraordinary. Carefully, she broke the wax seal and unfolded the thick parchment inside. The letter read, "Dear Miss Lucy Walker, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted into Everglow Academy of Magical Art. Your presence is requested at the start of term, where you will begin your training in the magical discipline. Please note that attendance is compulsory, as your magical abilities have been detected. Yours sincerely, Professor Allure, Headmistress." Lucy's eyes scanned the letter again and again. Magic. Was this a joke? But something deep inside her stirred a strange, almost primal recognition. The world around her seemed to hold its breath for a moment, and for the first time, Lucy felt right. This was what had been missing. The piece she didn't know she'd been searching for. Magic was real, and she was a part of it. The following weeks were a whirlwind. Arrangements were made, and Lucy found herself standing at the gates of Everglow Academy, a place she'd never imagined could exist. The academy was nestled in a secluded valley, hidden from the non-magical world. Its towering spires and vast grounds cloaked in an ethereal mist. A sense of wonder filled her as she stepped through the gates, the air buzzing with a strange energy she couldn't yet understand. The grounds were full of students, most older than her, all bustling with excitement. It wasn't too long before Lucy found herself in the grand hall, where the headmistress, Professor Allure, stood at the front, welcoming the new student. Allure was tall, with silver hair that shimmered in the light and robes that seemed to change colors depending on how you looked at them. Her voice was commanding yet warm as she spoke of the academy, its rich history, the importance of their studies, and most importantly, the darkness that lurked beyond their wall. "We must always be vigilant," Allure said, her gaze sweeping across the room. "There are forces in this world that seek to destroy what we hold dear. As students of Everglow, you are not just learning magic, you are preparing to defend our world." Lucy felt a chill run down her spine at the mention of dark forces, but before she could dwell on it, she was swept into the routine of student life. The next few days passed in a blur of new faces, unfamiliar surroundings, and her first magical lesson. The other students were just as strange and wonderful as the school itself. Her first real friend was Aiden, a tall, sandy-haired boy with an easygoing smile. They met during a class on elemental magic when Lucy's spell went slightly awry, causing a gust of wind to knock over several books. Aiden had laughed, not unkindly, and offered to help her with the next spell. His natural talent for magic was immediately apparent, and Lucy found herself grateful for his guidance. Then there was Sophie, quiet and bookish with a sharp intellect and an even sharper wit. Sophie had a knack for potions and seemed to know the answer to every question their instructors asked. She kept mostly to herself but was quick to offer help when Lucy found herself struggling to understand the more theoretical aspects of their magical training. Lastly, there was Max, a mischief maker with an unpredictable streak. Lucy wasn't sure what to make of him at first. His quick wit and occasional pranks made him popular among the other students, but there was an edge to him, a sense that he was always holding something back. He seemed to delight in challenging Lucy, whether it was in class or during their free time, constantly pushing her to prove herself. Despite the ups and downs of her early days at Everglow, Lucy quickly discovered that magic came naturally to her. She excelled in defensive spells, much to the surprise of her instructors, and found herself drawn to the more complex, dangerous forms of magic that most students her age struggled with. However, she was terrible at potions no matter how hard she tried. They always turned out wrong. One evening, after another failed attempt at brewing a simple healing potion, Lucy found herself wandering the school's vast library. The shelves stretched up to the ceiling, filled with ancient texts and scrolls that hummed with arcane power. She wasn't sure what she was looking for, only that she felt an irresistible pull toward a section of the library she hadn't explored before. The shadows seemed thicker here, and the air was colder. As she moved deeper into the rows of books, her fingers brushed against an old, worn tome. Its leather cover was cracked, and its title was barely visible. Something about it called to her, and without thinking, she pulled it from the shelf. As she opened the book, the pages seemed to come alive, the words glowing faintly in the dim light. They spoke of an ancient prophecy, a chosen one who would rise against the Shadow Veil, a dark entity that had once nearly consumed the magical world. Lucy's heart raced as she read the prophecy. Could it be about her? She had always known she was different. But this was something far beyond anything she had imagined. The book warned that the chosen one would have to face unimaginable dangers, and the burden of saving the world would come at a great cost. The days that followed were tense. Strange things were happening at Everglow. Shadows flickered in the corners of her vision, and she could feel a creeping sense of dread that she couldn't appreciate. Whispers of the Shadow Veil spread through the school, and Lucy's nightmares became more frequent and vivid. In them, she saw dark figures moving through the academy, their eyes glowing with malice, and heard voices calling her name from the depths of the shadows. Aiden, Sophie, and Max noticed the changes too. Everglow was no longer the safe haven it had once seemed. The protective wards around the school began to weaken, and strange symbols appeared on the walls, written in a language no one could understand. The teachers were on high alert, but no one seemed to have any answers. One night, unable to sleep, Lucy confided in Aiden about the prophecy she had found. His usually carefree demeanor turned serious as he listened. "You really think this prophecy is about you?" he asked quietly. "I don't know," Lucy admitted, "but everything that's been happening can be a coincidence." Sophie, ever the pragmatist, wasn't too convinced prophecies are tricky things. They are often misinterpreted, or they mean something completely different than what we think. Max, on the other hand, seemed almost excited by the idea. "If it is you, then what are we waiting for? We should be training. If something saw coming, we need to be ready." Despite her doubts, Lucy agreed. She didn't want to believe that she was the chosen one, but with each passing day, the evidence seemed to mount. Together, the four friends began to practice magic far beyond what their teachers had assigned. They studied ancient texts, practiced defensive spells, and even delved into forbidden magic that was said to be the key to defeating the Shadow Veil. The tension around the academy reached a breaking point during the annual school festival. It was supposed to be a time of celebration, a moment for students and teachers to come together and showcase their magical talent. The courtyard was filled with colorful banners, magical displays, and food stands offering enchanted treats. But the sense of unease hung in the air like a storm cloud, and everyone seemed to be waiting for something to go wrong. It did. Just as the evening festivities were reaching their peak, the sky darkened unnaturally, and a cold wind swept through the courtyard. The torches that lined the walls flickered and died, plunging the area into darkness. A low guttural growl echoed from the shadows, and suddenly, the Nightwalkers appeared. The creatures were like living shadows, their forms shifting and flickering as they moved. Their glowing red eyes were fixed on the students, and they moved with a terrifying grace, their claws leaving trails of darkness in their wake. The courtyard erupted into chaos as the Nightwalkers descended. Students screamed, scrambling in every direction to escape the onslaught of shadowy creatures. Professors rushed forward, casting protective wards and firing off defensive spells. But the Nightwalkers were relentless. They moved like living smoke, slipping through barriers and dodging attacks with ease. Lucy's heart pounded in her chest. She could feel the weight of the prophecy pressing down on her as she stood frozen for a moment, watching the chaos unfold. Then out of the corner of her eye, she saw Aiden, Sophie, and Max rushing toward her, their faces pale with fear but determined. "We have to help," Aiden shouted, his wand already in hand. Sophie was breathing hard, her eyes wide but resolute. "The wards are failing. The professors can hold them off alone." Max grinned, though there was a sharp edge to it. "Time to show these shadow freaks what we were made of." Lucy nodded. her fear momentarily overtaken by a surge of adrenaline. This was it. This was the moment they had been preparing for. She could feel the magic pulsing in her veins stronger than ever before. Without another word, the four friends charged into the fray. Aiden led with a powerful gust of wind that sent a group of nightwalkers spiraling backward. Sophie quickly followed up with a series of firebolts that illuminated the dark courtyard, burning through the creature's smoky form. Max, ever the risk-taker, darted in and out of the shadows, drawing the nightwalkers' attention and casting lightning-fast hexes that slowed their movement. Lucy stood at the center of it all, her mind racing as she tried to recall every spell they had practiced. Defensive magic had always come naturally to her, and now she let it pour out of her. A shimmering barrier formed around the students nearby, blocking the nightwalkers from reaching them. The creatures hissed and clawed at the barrier, but it held firm. Still, it wasn't high enough. More and more nightwalkers poured into the courtyard, overwhelming the defensive. Lucy could see the professors struggling to maintain control, and despite their efforts, several students were already down, their bodies limp and motionless. The situation was spiraling out of control. And then, just as it seemed the nightwalkers would overrun them, a figure emerged from the shadows at the far end of the courtyard. Professor Ilara, her silver hair shimmered in the moonlight as she raised her hands high, her voice echoing through the courtyard in a language that Lucy didn't recognize. For a moment, everything froze. The nightwalkers halted, their red eyes flickering as if caught in a trance. Then, with a blinding flash of light, Ilara unleashed a spell of immense power. A wave of pure white energy rippled across the courtyard, sweeping through the nightwalkers and dissolving them into nothingness. Silence fell. The courtyard was empty, now save for the wounded students and the exhausted professor. Lucy collapsed to her knees, her body trembling with the effort of maintaining the protective barrier for so long. Professor Allure approached, her expression unreadable as she surveyed the damage. When her eyes fell on Lucy, there was a flicker of something, pride, perhaps, or recognition. "You did well," Ilara said softly, her voice carrying a weight of authority that made Lucy sit up straighter despite her exhaustion. But except that, over Ilara continued, the shadow veil is growing stronger. This was only the beginning. Lucy's stomach twisted at the words. The nightwalkers had been terrifying enough, but the thought of something even more dangerous lurking out there filled her with dread. She glanced at her friends, who were equally exhausted but alive, thanks to their combined effort. Ilira's gaze swept over them all. "There is much you do not yet understand. The Shadowville's power is ancient, far older than this academy. It has been sealed away for centuries, but now the seal is weakening, and I fear that you, Lucy, are at the center of it." The words hit Lucy like a punch to the gut. "Need but what?" Allura knelt beside her, her voice low but urgent. "Your magic is unlike any I've ever seen in a student so young. It sounds powerful, yes, but also wild, unrefined. That's because you come from a bloodline tied directly to the original keepers of the Shadowville's prison. Your ancestors were among those who sealed it away long ago, and now that bloodline has passed to you." Lucy felt the weight of the revelation settle heavily on her shoulder. She had always known she was different, but this was too much. She wasn't ready for this kind of responsibility. How could she, a girl who could barely brew a potion, be expected to face something as dangerous as the Shadow Veil? "But I am not strong enough," Lucy whispered, her voice trembling. "I can stop it." Ella Maigret placed a hand on her shoulder, her grip firm. "You won't have to face it alone. Your friends are with you, and together you are stronger than you realize. But you must prepare, and quickly. The final battle is coming." Over the next few days, the atmosphere at Everglow was tense. The attack had shaken everyone, and the professors were on high alert. Classes continued, but the students were quieter, more focused. They knew the Nightwalkers were only the beginning. Lucy, Aiden, Sophie, and Max spent every spare moment training. They practiced their spells late into the night, pushing themselves harder than ever before. They knew that when the Shadow Veil returned, they would have to be ready. One evening, as they gathered in the hidden room in the library where Lucy had found the prophecy, they came across a section of the text they hadn't noticed before. It spoke of a powerful ritual that could banish the Shadow Veil for good, but the cost was steep. Whoever performed the ritual would risk their life in the process. A heavy silence fell over the group as they read the words. They all knew what it meant. Lucy would have to be the one to perform the ritual. It was her destiny, her bloodline. but the thought of losing her terrified them all. "You don't have to do this," Nathan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We'll find another way." "There is no other way," Sophie said quietly. "The prophecy is clear. The chosen one has to be the one to perform the ritual." Max for once didn't have a snarky comment. He just stared at the floor, his jaw clenched. Lucy swallowed hard, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't want to die. She didn't even want to face the shadow light, but deep down she knew she had no choice. This was her fate, and no matter how much she wished it wasn't, she had to accept it. "We'll do it together," Lucy said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her inside. "I'll perform the ritual, but I'll need all of you to help me. We're in this together." The night of the final battle arrived sooner than any of them had expected. The air was thick with tension as they made their way to the heart of the academy, the place where the school's magical power was strongest. It was an ancient chamber deep beneath the school, its walls lined with glowing crystals that pulsed with energy. As they descended into the chamber, the ground began to shake. The shadow veil was coming. Lucy could feel its presence growing stronger with every step. Her friends stood beside her, their faces pale but determined. "We can do this," Aiden said, his voice filled with a quiet strength together. The chamber shook violently as the shadow veil appeared, a swirling mass of darkness that filled the room with an oppressive weight. Its voice echoed in Lucy's mind, cold and sinister. "You think you can stop me, child?" it hissed. "You are nothing. Your power is insignificant." Lucy gritted her teeth, her hands trembling as she raised her wand. "I am not nothing," she said, her voice shaking but resolute. "I am Lucy Walker, and I am not afraid of you." The battle that followed was the hardest thing Lucy had ever faced. The shadow veil was more powerful than she had imagined, its dark tendrils lashing out at them with a force that knocked them to the ground over and over again. But they didn't give up. Aiden, Sophie, and Max fought with everything they had, their spells flying fast and furious as they held the creature at bay. And then in the midst of the chaos, Lucy knew it was time. She could feel the magic surging inside her, the ancient power of her bloodline awakening, fully at last. She began the ritual, her voice steady as she spoke the words of the ancient spell. The shadows screamed in fury as the ritual took hold, its form beginning to unravel. But as the light grew brighter, Lucy felt her strength draining away. The power of the spell was too much for her to control, and she knew she was slipping away. Suddenly, she felt hands on her shoulders, Aiden, Sophie, and Max, lending her their strength. Together, they poured their magic into the spell, creating a barrier of light that surrounded the shadow veil. The creature howled in rage as it was torn apart, its dark essence dissolving into nothingness. And then it was over. The chamber was still, the air filled with the soft glow of the crystal. Lucy collapsed, her body limp with exhaustion, but she was alive.